I was standing in my kitchen that afternoon, surrounded by the soft smell of warm vanilla and sugar, decorating cupcakes like they were tiny promises of love. The sunlight hit the counter just right, making everything feel cozy and safe, the way I believed my marriage was. Lucas's birthday was coming up, and I wanted to make it special in that quiet, thoughtful way he always said he appreciated. Every swirl of frosting felt like a reminder of the life I thought we were still building together. I hummed along to the radio, letting myself get lost in the simple joy of doing something for someone I loved. In that moment, I honestly believed kindness was enough to hold everything in place. While setting a tray aside, the idea came to me so naturally that I smiled before I even finished thinking it. I should invite Mike, Lucas's best friend, the person who could always pull a laugh out of him no matter how stressful his week had been. The thought warmed me, like adding the perfect final touch to a surprise he'd never expect. I walked over to the counter where Lucas's phone was charging, still dusted with a bit of powdered sugar from earlier. There was nothing unusual about me grabbing it. We'd always shared everything. At least, that's what I believed back then. I scrolled through his contacts until I found Mike, copied the number, and dialed it without a second thought. But everything shifted the moment a woman answered the phone. Her voice was unfamiliar, soft, almost cautious, and it made my stomach tighten before I even knew why. I hesitated, my happy energy flickering like a candle meeting a sudden gust of wind. "Hi, is this Mike?" I asked, already confused by the silence on her end. When she said no, when she asked who Mike even was, I felt something inside me tilt out of place. I apologized quickly, assuming I'd copied the wrong number, trying to keep my tone steady. Then she asked who I was, and I told her. Bianca, Lucas's wife. Her pause was so long it felt like the world held its breath with me. And the moment she spoke again, nothing in my life felt familiar anymore. The silence on the line felt heavy, like it was pressing against my chest, waiting to crush something I wasn't prepared to lose. When the woman finally spoke again, her voice was fragile, trembling in a way that made my skin prickle. "Oh God, he told me he wasn't married." For a second, I couldn't even process the words. It was as if someone had suddenly switched all the lights off in my mind, leaving me standing in the dark. I gripped the counter with my free hand, the cupcake in my other slipping just slightly as if it knew it didn't belong in this moment anymore. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm, to understand. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to sound steady even though my heart was stumbling with every beat. Her breath hitched before she answered, and that tiny sound alone told me everything was about to change. "I've been seeing Lucas for over a year," she said, and the cupcake fell from my fingers and hit the floor with a dull, final thud. It felt like my body stopped with it. A year. I repeated the number in my mind, trying to match it with memories of family dinners, weekend mornings, quiet evenings on the couch. He had kissed me, laughed with me, slept beside me, while living another life I never even sensed. My vision blurred for a moment, not with tears but with disbelief so sharp it stole my breath. I wanted to ask her more, to demand details, to scream. But all that came out was a weak, "How? Why?" She tried to explain, her words stumbling over themselves. He said he was divorced, that he was lonely, that he wanted something real. Every sentence felt like a new blow, each one knocking down another piece of the world I thought I knew. I leaned against the counter, feeling the cool edge beneath my palm, as if it could steady me when nothing else could. Somewhere in the chaos of my thoughts, pieces of past conversations with Lucas began snapping into place in ways I didn't want them to. The late nights, the sudden trips. The excuses that sounded just a little too practiced. My voice, when it finally came back, was barely a whisper. "I was here," I said, mostly to myself. "I was here baking for him." And in that moment, standing in my own kitchen, I realized I wasn't just losing a surprise party. I was losing the version of my life that had kept me safe. I stayed frozen for a moment, listening to the faint sound of Anna breathing on the other end, both of us suspended in the wreckage of the truth. My mind raced through a year's worth of moments, trying to reconcile the man I shared a home with and the stranger she was describing. It felt like my heart was trying to pull in two directions at once, one desperate to deny everything, the other knowing deep down that the puzzle pieces fit in a way I never dared imagine. I straightened slowly, wiping my hands on my apron even though they weren't dirty anymore. "Thank you for telling me," I managed, my voice shockingly calm for someone whose life had just been split open. "You didn't betray me. He did." Saying it out loud felt like stepping into cold water, painful but awakening. Anna's voice cracked when she spoke again. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I believed her. There was no anger in her tone, just the kind of heartbreak that came from realizing you were manipulated by someone you trusted. And strangely, hearing the pain in her voice made mine settle. I wasn't alone in this. We were two women standing on opposite sides of the same lie, both blindsided, both hurting, both deserving answers we weren't given. I took a breath, steadying myself as I looked at the mess on the floor, the fallen cupcake, the frosting smeared across the tile, and felt something inside me slowly shift. The Bianca who decorated cupcakes for a man she adored was still here, but she wasn't naive anymore. She was waking up. Before I even realized it, my tone changed, still calm, but different now, sharper at the edges. "We need to talk," I told her. "In person." There was a brief pause, then she agreed, her voice still shaking. As we settled on a place and time, I glanced around the kitchen one last time, noticing how the light no longer felt warm. It felt harsh now, exposing everything I didn't want to see. When I hung up the phone, I stood there in the quiet, breathing through the ache and letting the truth settle like a storm cloud forming overhead. I didn't know exactly what I would hear from Anna when we met, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever story Lucas had been spinning was about to unravel, and I was ready to pull the threads myself. I arrived at the cafe before Anna, choosing a small table by the window where the late afternoon light spilled in like a spotlight on everything I was about to confront. My hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, more for something to hold than for comfort. I felt a tightness beneath my ribs, the kind that comes when your mind keeps replaying a truth it wishes it never heard. People around me chatted softly, laughed, stirred sugar into their drinks, living lives untouched by betrayal. And there I was, trying to steady myself for a conversation that could break me further, or finally make sense of the lies I'd been swallowing for months. When the door opened and Anna stepped inside, I felt my breath catch, not from anger, but from the weight of what we shared without ever choosing it. She spotted me quickly, her steps hesitant, as if she wasn't sure she even deserved to walk toward me. Up close, she looked younger than I expected, eyes rimmed red, lips trembling with the kind of guilt that didn't belong to her. She held her phone in both hands like it was the last thread connecting her to the illusion Lucas had sold her. I gestured for her to sit, keeping my expression composed, even though my heart felt like it was made of cracked glass. "Start from the beginning," I said, and even I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. It wasn't cold, it was controlled. Like someone who had already cried everything she was ever going to cry. Anna took a shaky breath before speaking. "I met Lucas at a bar last year," she began, staring down at her hands. "He said he was divorced and lonely, that he wanted someone stable and honest." Her voice wavered with each word, but I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear it all, the parts he hid, the things he never dared to confess to me. As she talked, something strange happened inside me. The devastation I'd carried from the kitchen started hardening into something else. Resolve, clarity, a new kind of strength that came from finally seeing the truth without the pretty pictures he'd painted. When she said, "He spent holidays with me, weekends he claimed he was working," I felt a sting, but not the collapse I expected. Instead, I felt my spine straighten. I had been at home baking cupcakes while he was building a second life. And now, sitting across from the woman he lied to just as deeply, I realized that maybe this meeting wasn't just about pain, it was about reclaiming my voice. I watched her as she spoke, noticing every detail, the way her fingers twisted around each other, the way she swallowed hard before admitting things she never should have had to confess. And with every sentence she shared, puzzle pieces I'd ignored in my own marriage clicked into place with sickening ease. "He always said he had business trips," I murmured, almost to myself. "Late-night emergencies, clients who needed him." Hearing my own words out loud made me feel foolish, like I'd been willingly blind. Anna's eyes lifted, glossy with guilt. "I thought we were serious," she said softly. "He promised a future. He said he couldn't wait to introduce me to people once things settled." That word, settled, hit me like a punch. I realized it was the same word Lucas used whenever he wanted me to stop asking questions. Settled, as if lies could ever settle. She reached into her bag with trembling hands and placed her phone on the table, turning it toward me. I think you should see this. The screen lit up with photos, dates, hotel rooms, dinners I never knew he paid for, gifts I never received, memories that weren't mine but were tied to a man who vowed his life to me. I felt my breath hitch as I scrolled, but I forced myself to keep looking. I needed to see the truth in all its ugly detail. I needed to carve it into my memory so I would never make excuses for him again. My hand shook once, just once, before I steadied it. I wasn't going to break here, not in front of her, not because of him. I set the phone down gently, like it was something fragile even though the truth it carried had already shattered so much. Thank you, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You didn't betray me. He did. And suddenly, I saw a shift in Anna. Her shoulders dropped, her breath released, as if she'd been bracing for anger I didn't have for her. What are you going to do? She whispered, and there was a hint of fear in her tone. Not fear of me, but fear of what would come next. I leaned back, feeling something sharp and new forming inside me. Not rage, not sadness, precision, purpose. I'm going to give him the surprise he deserves, I said, and the words tasted steady, strong, almost calm, because now that I had the truth, I wasn't afraid anymore. Anna hesitated after my words, as if she wasn't sure whether to believe the calmness she heard in my voice. I couldn't blame her. Even I was surprised by how steady I felt. But beneath that stillness, there was a quiet fire spreading, slow, intentional, controlled. She wiped a tear with the back of her hand before whispering, I never wanted to hurt anyone. I really thought he was mine. For the first time, I truly saw her, not as the woman on the other end of a phone call, not as a threat, but as someone who had been fed the same lies I had. Someone who built dreams on ground that was already cracking. Her heartbreak mirrored mine, just from another angle. And that strange, unexpected sense of solidarity made the room feel less heavy, like we were dividing the weight between us. I reached out and gently pushed her phone back toward her. You were in the dark just like me, I said. The person who owes us answers is the same man. She nodded slowly, her eyes softening with reluctant relief. I don't even know who he really is, she admitted. I let out a small, humorless laugh, not because anything was funny, but because I understood that feeling all too well. Neither do I said. And in that moment, our shared confusion turned into something sharper. Shared clarity. Lucas had spun 2 different stories, tailored to 2 different women, hoping neither of us would look closely enough to see the frayed edges. Now the seams were coming undone right in front of him. He just didn't know it yet. I gathered my things, feeling the air shift around me, like the moment right before a storm breaks. We're not done, I told her, meeting her eyes with a steady resolve. There's more I need to know. More he needs to answer for. She looked frightened, but she also looked determined, a spark of courage replacing the guilt she carried. Tell me what you need, she said quietly. I stood up, pushing my chair back with a slow exhale. Come Saturday, I replied. You deserve the truth just as much as I do. As I walked out of the cafe, the late afternoon breeze hit my face, cool and bracing, like the world was preparing me for what came next. And deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just about hearing the truth anymore. It was about making sure he finally faced it. By the time I got home that evening, the kitchen still smelled faintly of vanilla, but now the sweetness felt out of place, like it belonged to someone else's life, someone still blissfully unaware. I stood in the doorway for a moment, staring at the counter where the cupcakes once sat, and felt something shift inside me. I wasn't here to plan a birthday party anymore. I was here to plan the truth. And strangely, that realization didn't break me. It steadied me. I tied my hair back, rolled up my sleeves, and sat at the table with my laptop, a notepad, and the determination of someone who refused to be lied to 1 minute longer. If Lucas had built a double life, I was going to expose every brick he used to build it. The first step was simple: gather evidence. Not because I wanted drama, but because I wanted clarity. Facts that couldn't be twisted, denied, or sweet-talked away. Anna sent me screenshots of their conversations, messages full of promises, excuses, and lies dressed as affection. Photos followed, hotels I'd never seen, dinners I never shared, gifts he never gave me. Each one stung like a blade sliding between the ribs, but I forced myself to look at them all, letting the pain carve out space for something stronger. Then I logged into our shared bank account. The charges were right there. Hotel nights on weekends he'd claimed he was exhausted from work, dinners in neighborhoods he said he rarely visited, trips that apparently weren't business trips at all. Every click of my mouse tightened the knot in my chest but sharpened my resolve. Next, I opened his phone logs, calls at midnight, calls at dawn, calls he took outside claiming he needed quiet to focus. He wasn't juggling responsibilities, he was juggling lives. And as I sat there, lit only by the glow of my computer, I felt a strange kind of calm settle over me. If he wanted to live 2 stories at once, then he could face both of them together. I needed someone besides Anna who knew him well, someone he couldn't manipulate. So I picked up my phone and dialed the real Mike, not the ghost of a contact Lucas used to hide his lies. "Hey, Bianca, what's up?" he answered cheerfully, unaware of the truth about to crack open between us. "I need you at our house Saturday night," I said, my voice firm and cold. When he asked, "For Lucas's birthday?" I exhaled slowly. For Lucas's truth. Mike fell silent on the other end of the line, the kind of silence that comes when someone senses a storm but doesn't yet know its size. "Damn. What did he do?" he finally asked, his voice lower, cautious. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying myself before answering. "Just be there," I said, because I wasn't ready to spill the details. Not yet. Not over the phone. Not without looking him in the eye. Mike didn't argue. He just exhaled sharply, the way someone does when they already suspect the truth. "Okay," he said. "I'll be there." And with that, another piece of Saturday night clicked into place. One person who cared about Lucas. One person he couldn't charm or manipulate once the evidence hit the table. After hanging up, I stared at my phone for a long second, feeling the weight of what I needed to do next settle on my shoulders. Inviting Anna wasn't just a choice, it was necessary. She deserved closure just as much as I did, and if I was going to confront Lucas properly, the truth had to arrive from every direction he tried to hide it from. I tapped her name, my thumb hovering over the call button for a heartbeat before pressing it. She answered quickly, breath uneven, like she'd been waiting for my call. "Bianca?" she asked, her voice small. "Come Saturday," I told her. "You deserve answers too." She hesitated, fear and uncertainty bleeding through the line. "Are you sure?" The question wasn't about the meeting. It was about whether she had the right to stand in front of the man who deceived us both. "Trust me," I said. "It's time." When I hung up, the house felt unnervingly quiet, as if the walls themselves were listening. I walked through each room slowly, taking in the life I had built with a man who hadn't respected it. The framed photos, the throw blankets I picked out, the notes he left on the fridge, none of it looked the same anymore. But instead of crumbling, I felt something harden inside me, like steel being forged. Saturday wasn't just going to be a confrontation, it was going to be liberation. I wasn't preparing a party, I was preparing justice. And every step I took, every message printed, every detail gathered, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself he never deserved to break in the first place. By Friday night, the dining table was covered with everything I needed: printed messages, screenshots, bank statements, call logs, photos Anna had sent me. Each piece of paper felt like a tiny explosion, fragments of a truth I could no longer ignore. I arranged them carefully, not out of spite, but out of clarity. I wanted Saturday to be undeniable. No shouting matches, no opportunities for him to twist the story. Just facts, laid out like a map of the life he'd chosen behind my back. As I looked at the evidence spread across the table, I felt surprisingly steady. There was no trembling in my hands anymore, no crack in my voice. Just purpose. Pure, unwavering purpose. Later, I sat on the couch, letting the quiet press around me, and thought about the woman I was just a week ago. Someone who baked cupcakes with a heart full of love. Someone who trusted without hesitation. That version of me felt distant, almost like a memory. Instead, I felt sharpened now, clearer about myself than I had been in years. Betrayal does something strange to a person. It breaks you in places you didn't know existed, but it also forces you to rebuild differently. Stronger. Smarter. And as I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, I realized something important. Saturday wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about truth. And once truth enters a room, lies have nowhere left to stand. I walked back to the table and gathered the documents into a neat stack, smoothing the edges with a slow exhale. There was still a hint of vanilla in the air, a small, sweet ghost from a life that no longer fit me. I turned off the lights and headed toward the bedroom, feeling the weight of the upcoming confrontation settle into something almost empowering. Tomorrow, Lucas would walk into our home expecting a celebration. Instead, he'd walk straight into the reality he built with his own hands. And as I lay in bed that night, eyes open in the dark, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. Ready to look him in the eyes, ready to speak the truth, ready to end the double life he thought I'd never uncover. Saturday evening arrived with a strange stillness, the kind that settles right before a storm breaks open. I stood in the living room, surrounded by decorations that were never meant to celebrate anything anymore. The soft glow of string lights cast warm shadows across the walls, making the scene look deceptively gentle, almost festive, if you didn't know the truth sitting heavy beneath it all. I arranged the stack of evidence neatly on the table, each sheet a piece of the life Lucas never thought I'd uncover. My heartbeat was steady, not racing with panic like I expected. Instead, it thudded with purpose. Tonight wasn't about fear. It was about clarity. Finally, painfully, beautifully clear. I heard the front door click open just as I set the last page down. Lucas's footsteps echoed in the hallway, quick and light, the sound of someone expecting a surprise party, laughter, friends, maybe even cupcakes. "Bianca?" he called out, his tone boyish and eager in a way that made my skin tighten. He walked into the living room with a grin already forming, until he saw us, me standing still. Mike leaning against the wall, arms crossed. Anna sitting on the edge of the couch, jaw clenched. The grin collapsed instantly, confusion rushing in to fill the empty space. He blinked, eyes darting from one face to another, and finally landed on the pile of papers spread across the table. What's going on?" I took a step forward, feeling the room settle around my voice before I even spoke. "Your birthday surprise," I said, not raising my tone, just letting the truth sit in the air like a weight he couldn't dodge. Anna lifted her chin. Mike straightened. The atmosphere shifted, sharp and focused, like we were all holding the same breath, waiting to see how he'd try to escape this one. Lucas's face paled as he looked at Anna, then at Mike, then back at me. "Anna? What are you doing here?" he stammered, voice cracking with a panic he could no longer disguise. And in that exact moment, for the first time in a long time, he was the one standing in the dark, while I finally stood in the light. Lucas took a step back, as if distance alone could untangle him from what he was seeing. "Bianca, this isn't what it looks like," he began, defaulting to the oldest script in the book. I actually felt a small, bitter laugh rise in my chest, but I didn't let it escape. "Really?" I asked, lifting an eyebrow. "Should I read the messages? Or should Anna do it?" His eyes widened, panic flickering like a faulty light bulb. Mike shifted beside me, jaw tight, disappointment radiating off him like heat. "Man, you told me she was a coworker," he said, shaking his head. Lucas opened his mouth again, but no explanation came out. Just fragments, excuses, scraps of lies that couldn't form sentences anymore. Anna reached for the stack of printed texts, her hands trembling but her voice steady as she began to read. "Don't worry," she recited, eyes fixed on the page. "My wife is boring. You're the one I want." The words hung in the room like smoke. Thick, poisonous, impossible to ignore. Lucas lunged forward suddenly, desperate to snatch the papers from her hands. Instinctively, I stepped between them, my voice sharp and cold. "Touch her and I'll call the police." His body froze mid-motion, shock flashing across his face. Not because of the threat, but because he had never seen this version of me. The version who didn't shake, who didn't doubt, who didn't bend herself into forgiveness. He swallowed hard, eyes darting between the three of us like he was searching for the weakest point in a structure that wasn't going to collapse this time. "Bianca, please, let me explain," he pleaded, and for a moment I saw the familiar softness he used when he wanted to get away with something. But that softness didn't work on me anymore. Explain to who? I asked quietly. Me? Mike? Anna? Or all the people you told different versions of the same lie? Mike let out a slow exhale. Man, you lied to everyone. Anna added softly, you lied to both of us. And with each word, Lucas seemed to shrink a little more, sinking onto the couch like the air had finally given up holding him up. He sat there on the couch, shoulders slumped, eyes darting between the floor and the stack of printed lies staring back at him. For a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Shame, maybe, or the realization that the performance was finally over. But whatever it was, it came too late. I stood in front of him, close enough that he couldn't look away, but far enough that he couldn't reach for the softness he always counted on. Happy birthday, Lucas, I said, my voice calm, steady, painfully clear. I hope you enjoy the end of your double life. The lights around us twinkled like they were mocking him, the decorations a reminder of the celebration he was never going to have. Mike stepped forward, arms crossed tightly over his chest. I trusted you, man, he said quietly. I defended you more times than I can count. Lucas didn't answer. Maybe he knew there was nothing left to say, or maybe he finally understood that every excuse would only dig the hole deeper. Anna stood too, tucking her hair behind her ear with a shaky breath. I thought you cared about me, she said. You played me, Lucas. You played us both. Still, he said nothing. Silence, his favorite hiding place, was now the loudest confession he'd ever made. I gathered the papers from the table, sliding them into a neat stack before placing them right in front of him. These, I said, are the parts of your life you thought I'd never see. He stared down at them, jaw tight, like he was afraid to touch them and afraid not to at the same time. But I didn't stay to watch him choose. I stepped back, letting the distance settle between us, feeling the power shift with every inch I reclaimed. Something inside me settled, an anchor dropping, a storm clearing, a truth landing exactly where it needed to. Tonight wasn't an ending. Not really. It was the opening door to something else entirely, something I could finally walk toward without him weighing me down. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the thick envelope I had prepared the night before, the one that felt heavier than paper should ever feel. When I placed it in Lucas's hands, he looked at it like it might burn him. What's this? He asked, voice small, almost childlike. He opened it slowly, and the color drained from his face the moment he saw the first page. Divorce papers? He whispered. My voice didn't shake when I answered. With proof attached, everything you did. Saying the words out loud felt like cutting the final thread. Clean, inevitable, freeing in a way I hadn't expected. Lucas scrambled to his feet, desperation flashing across his features like a drowning man reaching for something already out of reach. Bianca, please, don't do this. Let's talk privately, he begged, glancing nervously at Mike and Anna as if trying to salvage a scrap of dignity. But I didn't move. I didn't lower my voice. I didn't offer him a corner to retreat to. You don't hide affairs privately, I said, keeping my gaze steady on his. You don't fix them privately. And you don't get to ask for privacy now. His mouth opened, but no apology came out, only a panicked grasp for control he no longer had. Then he snapped, voice sharp and trembling. You're ruining my life! The words echoed in the room, harsh and pathetic all at once. I felt the anger rise, but not the kind that burns you, the kind that clarifies you. No, I replied softly, almost gently. You ruined ours. Anna looked at me then, eyes filled with sympathy and understanding. Two women standing in the ruins of the same lie. Mike shook his head in disbelief, stepping closer like a quiet shield at my side. I turned back to Lucas, feeling the moment settle like a final verdict. It's over, I said. You don't get another chance to lie your way out. And for the first time, he realized I meant every word. Lucas looked at me like he was waiting for a crack, some tiny flicker of softness he could slip back into, the familiar way he always did when he needed forgiveness. But there wasn't one, not anymore. I walked to the front door, each step steady, controlled, almost ceremonial. When I opened it, The night air swept in. Cool, quiet, indifferent to the chaos unfolding inside. "Get out, Lucas," I said, holding the door wide. He stared at me, stunned, as if the idea of consequences had never once occurred to him. His eyes darted from me to the envelope still trembling in his hand. "Bianca, please," he murmured. But the plea landed flat. Empty. He tried to look at Mike, as if friendship might save him. But Mike just shook his head, disappointment carved deep into his expression. "Man, you did this to yourself," he said. Lucas turned to Anna next, maybe hoping for sympathy, but she stepped back. "Don't look at me like that," she said quietly. "I believed every lie you told me. I won't believe one more." And just like that, every anchor he'd relied on, every person he thought would bend for him, stood firm. He wasn't losing just a marriage. He was losing every version of the life he'd fabricated. He stepped outside finally, shoulders hunched as if the night itself pressed down on him. For a brief moment, he lingered on the doorstep, eyes glassy, chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. I met his gaze one last time. Not with hatred, not with regret, but with a clarity so sharp it cut through whatever illusion of control he still thought he had. "This is the part you don't get to rewrite," I said softly. And then I closed the door. A slow, deliberate motion that felt less like shutting him out and more like shutting myself back in. The lock clicked, final and quiet. Behind it, for the first time in a long time, I felt something that resembled peace begin to take shape. The moment the door clicked shut, the whole house exhaled with me, as if it too had been holding its breath through months of secrets and lies. I leaned against the wood for a second, letting the silence settle around me, not heavy anymore, but strangely light. When I turned back, Anna was wiping her cheeks gently, her expression soft with relief rather than shame. I walked toward her, feeling that strange bond between us strengthen, born of truth, not betrayal. "You're free from him too," I told her, and for the first time since we met, she actually smiled. "Thank you, and I'm so sorry," she whispered. I shook my head. "You didn't lie to anyone. He did." Anna gathered her things with a steadier breath, and Mike walked her to the door, offering the kind of quiet support only someone with a good heart could give. When he came back, he looked at me with worry and admiration all tangled together. "You okay?" he asked. And surprisingly, I realized I was. Not untouched, not unbroken, but standing. Stronger than the version of myself who baked cupcakes in a kitchen full of lies. "I will be," I said. And I meant it. Mike nodded, giving me a gentle squeeze on the shoulder before heading out too, leaving me alone in the living room where everything had changed in just a few hours. I walked toward the table where the evidence still lay, picking up each piece slowly, not with pain, but with closure. Every photo, every message, every receipt had served its purpose. They weren't wounds anymore. They were answers. And as I gathered them into a single neat pile, a sense of quiet power settled over me. This wasn't the ending of my life. It was the ending of a chapter I should have closed long ago. I turned off the lights and stood there for a moment in the soft darkness, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the rhythm of my own breathing, steady and free. Tomorrow would be the beginning of something new, something mine.